Welcome to What Brought You Here Today, an interview-style mental health podcast that focuses on real experiences and how we navigate and move through them. The guests on this show provide personal and professional insight at times and come from all walks of life. Not all of the guests work in the mental health field, and they've all chosen to be brave and vulnerable while sharing parts of their story with you. Please keep your own mental health and well-being in mind while listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to What Brought You Here Today. I am your host, Ryanne. I am joined by Laura, a social worker here also in Minnesota. So hi, Laura. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Laura. I'm a clinical social worker based out of Minnesota. I own Open Way Therapy, which is a way for people to talk more about some of the bigger topics and more complex mental topics that intersect and interact with their lives on an everyday basis. A lot of my work is all about education and outreach.
I love that. How long have you been a social worker for?
Funny you should ask, Ryan. I am late to the social work game. I actually have a pretty funny story about social workers, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
Okay.
also late to the therapy game, so we're in the same
Got
boat.
this. We got this. Yeah,
We
thank
do.
you. So I grew up in a very conservative world, and I got married right out of school and had my babies right away. Well, initially, when I was pregnant with my second, I needed to go in. He was coming early, went in for preterm labor, and we had really crappy insurance. And the nurse came in and she's, "What can you do for you?" And here I am. My son is coming early. They're doing all the fetal fibronectin tests, and I don't know what's going on. And the one thought that comes to me is, I don't know if I'm going to pay for this.
Yeah.
Right? She's, "Oh, no worry, honey. We'll get the social worker in here and we'll take care of this." And I was like, "Okay, thanks. Good, good." So I tell this to my partner at the time and I say, we're going to talk to the social worker. And they looked at me and they said, "We can't do that. The social worker is going to take away our kids." So I did it, right? Because there's so much stigma and
Yeah.
so much misunderstanding around what we social workers actually do. It wasn't until actually I had my third child, he was 2, and I needed a graduate program that would help me be a mom as well as pursue something I really cared about, which was mental health, that I stumbled upon a social work program and fell in love. I've been doing this since about 2016.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got some years in you.
It's got some years. We've been doing this for a hot minute. I don't think I'm going to take away anybody's kids. I have enough of my own. Kids with yours.
Also, like debilitating stigma to have around the social work and kind of our field in general, that any bad thing is going to result in kids being taken away or child protection
Mhm.
but CPS being called. I just, yeah.
It's really common. And I think for me, and part of the interest in trauma specifically stemmed from really being overwhelmed as a young mom. And I was 23, 25, 27 when I had my kids. Very strict religious belief system in place and very strict ideas about what my role was as a woman. And I know that's not uncommon. A lot of us have had those stories in some way or another. And I love that people are bringing that to the fore. One thing I think we don't talk a lot about is how that impacts our view of the world in general and our own sense of agency and empowerment. Again, and I know you've been talking a lot about motherhood on your show. And for me, one of the big things that I learned early on, and this sparked my interest in trauma, was I went to a talk at a child advocacy center, fun nerd night, mom. And the speaker there said something that blew me away. This was before I'd even started grad school. And they said, "Trauma is anything too much, too fast, too soon, from which you felt like you had no escape. Trauma is anything too much, too fast, too soon, from which you felt like you had no escape." And I listened to that and I was like, oh my God, that was having kids in such rapid order with no place to go, nothing, like no sense of support, community, awareness, no room for me. That I was like, that was my trauma. And there it was like, okay, so then what do we do to expand our world so that trauma is no longer the only rock rattling around in the jar?
Yes. What a beautiful definition.
Yeah, it really actually, as I think about it more, the from which we felt like we had no escape, that was what I learned in grad school, so I apologize, I'm backtracking a little bit.
No, yeah,
That's added since, but yeah, that's what I tell my clients. It's huge, it opens everything up. I always tell my clients, like, keep in mind, this is not what the DSM will tell you. So our diagnostics are always a little bit different for a number of different, and let's validate
Yeah.
that there was that interception, that inter-awareness that this is too much. I can't do this. I don't know how. I'm in over my head. And I don't even know how to get out.
I think it contradicts everything that we've maybe learned or historically heard about trauma, that big T trauma is what you have to have in order to have trauma. Even that book back there, The Myth of Normal, that's like the basis of it, is that it must be some kind of big traumatic experience to be considered trauma.
And how many of us want to say things like, and I love my sons dearly, more than life itself, but to say, yeah, this was hard. This was painful. And if I could have you just, I don't know, some more spread out and with like some more money in the bank, this may not have been quite what it was. And here it is. So really, it's not just what happened to you. It's also what happened to you, creating that safe space to hold and experience the emotion, and then saying, how do we want this to inform our future? And what kind of a life do you want to create from here?
Yeah.
Because we're not there anymore.
Right.
And what do we need to do to get you to understand, to help you understand that we're not there anymore?
Yeah. And maybe I pulled some people on Instagram to get some questions. And one of the questions was, does trauma affect us subconsciously? And how?
How?
I'm getting 2 thumbs up right now. Let's talk
You
about it.
are getting 2 thumbs up. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes. So it goes back to some of our basic brain physiology. When we're looking at our brain, a lot of times people use the triad model of the brain. It's simplistic. It's not totally accurate. For all intents and purposes, though, we're going with it. Essentially, if you're going to make a fist with your thumb in the center, not the palm of your hand, that butt of your hand, that's like your brains, right? So that is where all of our involuntary muscle movements are controlled, and anything involuntary, eating, breathing, sleeping, pooping, all that jazz, right? And our muscle movements and those voluntary ones. Our thumb in the middle is going to be the subcortical region, and this is where our emotion and memory center is. So this is where we have all those stored sensations and body awarenesses, even like the scent, smell. This is why when you smell apples every Thanksgiving, you think of your grandma's house.
Mhm.
Or Axe body spray, and you're like, ooh, high school. Right? That's what's going on. On top of that, we have our neocortex. And that's our rational thinking. We had done everything from create fire to Elon Musk in that little bit of time with this neocortex. When we get a stimulus from our outside environment, our brain is always going to follow a specific pattern. It does that because it's geared towards survival. And that specific pattern is going to be, first, it's going to go up to the brainstem and say, is this stimulus going to impact my eating, breathing, sleeping, pooping? No? Okay, let's keep it going. The next place it goes is into our limbic system, the subcortical area. And it's going to say, is this going to remind me of a time when I felt unsafe, or I felt like there wasn't some predictability over my environment? If it says yes, then it's going to react from there. And send the message back down through our brainstem. It's going to make us move or send out the hormones we need to make things happen. And it's going to shut our neocortex off. When it does, that means we're not thinking rationally anymore. We really are just thinking with our gut. So, case example, what does this mean? I am partnered to a really lovely man, very goofy. And he loves to surprise me sometimes and jump scare, right? These jump scares.
Yeah.
Coming out of the bathroom one day, and I saw him come around the corner, and my brain said, Laura, don't scream. That's just him. He's just trying to scare you. He's just being a turd. Did my body have that? No, my brain's like, override. Like, someone's coming at you. You're going to die. And I let out the most blood curdling scream. And he's like, are you okay? I was like, what are you, moron? Scared the crap out of me. It's that same thing. Even though we may be aware that there's really not a threat, our brain and our body are going to respond as if they. Part of what trauma work does is to make us aware of these subconscious reflexes. Be like, oh, we can't do that. We all have them. And they could be super innocuous. They could be like, I just can't do strawberry lappy taffy because I was eating that when I found out my grandma died.
Mhm.
Right? Another person would be like, I love strawberry lappy taffy. What's your problem? Or wow, church is awesome for me. That's really where I feel the love of the community, the universe, the world. Ever since I go into church and I feel like I want to puke, I just can't do it. It's different for everyone, and it's okay to start noticing what those activators.
Yeah. I think this is really also insightful in the context of kids and what behaviors and tantrums actually might be in some circumstances. Rather, they are constantly in protective mode because the job of their brain is to keep them safe and keep them alive. And I have this conversation a lot in the work that I do of they're reacting for a reason. And
Mhm.
this is part of it. Maybe not necessarily a traumatic experience, but in the context of something too much, too fast, too soon, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah. And at this point too, that neocortex, especially for itty bitties, it's just not turned on. It's just not
It's not
turned
there.
on. And so it's okay to be like, "Y- I understand that Pixar's Up made you cry. It makes me cry too, but that this was too much. And that you're not able to see this as a storyline because I'm able to rationalize this. You can't. Not yet.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For kids and then for our own memories as kids too. When things seem bigger
Mhm.
than they were, that's they were that big to you. Give yourself a little bit of grace. You weren't always 32, 38, 47.
Right.
You were 7.
Right. Yeah. How do you process some of that with in the work that you do?
Yeah. So a lot of I also see clients on the side. I currently am part of a group practice. The open way is really something I'm starting to grow on my own time simply because I am so passionate about educating people about this. The in my group practice and the work I do with that, couple different ways. One, for me, it always starts with psychoeducation and creating places of comfort. I don't believe that we really feel safe doing trauma work until we know what's going on. A lot of us, more and more, I see Gen Zers saying the things.
Yeah.
Right. But for the most part, there's millennials and up. There's just a relative distrust of the therapeutic process and especially of our subconscious, right? I think we all come in that and that in some way this social worker is going to take away our kids in a way. The social worker is going to take away our core memories. The social worker is going to take away the sense of self and safety. And I want to make sure we don't do that. So I try to be very transparent. Education is a big part of what I do, even with my clients. With that, then there's a couple different modalities of treatment out there. Like anything else, it's about what works best for you. I say there's a lot of paths up the trauma mountain. I offer a couple of different types of modalities, but I'm always happy to refer people to others. The ketamine, if that's or yoga or the meditation mindfulness, the being out in nature, the artwork, the art therapy. I do ART, accelerated resolution therapy, and brain spotting. Those are both iterations of EMDR. Other people love IFS, internal family systems. It's really about what works with you and what resonates.
Yeah. Are you finding that you're making a lot of referrals for ketamine?
No, that's come up a couple of times. If anything, what I run into is people expecting trauma treatment to be a panacea, like this
Yeah.
magic cure all. And I'm like, no,
Yeah. Right.
you got to meet us a lot more before that happens. Yeah, that's what I'm finding at least.
Yeah. I had a therapist, an owner of a ketamine clinic here in Minnesota on last season's podcast, Eric, and it was just so informative and educational about the work that is happening behind the scenes with that and what that treatment looks like. So I was just curious if I don't get very many questions about it, but I do get some of, do you think I should try that? That's a really big treatment to just jump into, but we can talk about it.
It's worth, I think anything, if you're interested, go follow it. I am not the gatekeeper. I
Right.
am one person who has one way to offer. If it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, thank God we're all diverse. Yeah, I think I will have thank you. I'll have to go back and listen to that like some more because it also came on so fast.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
that, yeah, I'd just be curious what the growth process is for them.
Yeah. Shifting from the subconscious, one of the other questions was, does trauma impact our physical health?
Yes.
Big yes.
Yes, yes, yes. If anyone has any of these questions, I would wholeheartedly recommend any of these books by Gabor Mate. You mentioned The Myth of Normal. His book too, When the Body Says No, delves a lot more into that.
Yeah.
Again, this goes back to the way that our brain responds to stimuli in our environment, right? And a lot of these things we just don't have control over. Part of the question is, Laura, why don't we have control over this? So let's go back to the fist model of the brain, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We look at our brain from an evolutionary perspective. That butt of your hand, that palm where it was our brainstem, from an evolutionary perspective, that's 300 million years old. Our subcortical region is going to be 200 million years old. So our emotion and memory center. The neocortex, that rational part that we're so proud of, the part that helps us think and talk and laugh, that part of our, oh, I mean, not laugh, but definitely think and talk and share junk on social
Do the
media.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, make fun of the Kardashians. I don't care. That part of our brain is only 2 million years old. So we have, as a species, managed to, or just any species has managed to survive on this world really without needing to think or talk about it. Right. So that's why our brain acts the way it does, is it's already got a system that works. Why would we shift and change it? And we use that logical capacity and that decision making as a last resort. So when we're stressed and when we're activated, our body is just going to, without us really even being aware, shift our hormones and shift the way that we interact with our environment on a physiological level to react to that stress and that activator, whether or not it's real. Even just the perception, again, the perception of it being a stress isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the books that you mentioned and The Body Keeps the Score is one that I often refer back to. I don't generally like suggest people, it's so textbook heavy. I feel like
So
it's just, it's so dense to process on your own. But if you are really interested in trauma, it is a really great book for that. Same with The Myth of Normal and When the Body Says No. But there's so many great resources out there for people, and to really understand that trauma does live in our bodies and like in our cells. And that
Mhm.
has an impact on one, how we show up in the world, but also like how our body continues to function through the trauma.
One thing I've noticed as I've been doing some of the deeper trauma work with some of my clients too, is especially like when people start moving their hands a lot as they do some of this deep internal work, and they'll be like, my hands hurt, my hands hurt. This has happened several times. I notice it more with women. Granted, I see more women just generally. So this is not a scientific study here. But when I first started noticing that, the one thing all I could think was that of how many people get rheumatoid arthritis
Yeah.
later in and they can't move their hands. I was also, again, and When the Body Says No, they were talking about how cortisol, one of our stress hormones, is often associated with bone thinning, and that postmenopausal women with depression are more likely to develop osteoporosis and experience fractures. And you just wonder, there's a lot of osteoporosis in my family. And I'm like, how many women in my family just didn't get treated? So
Oh,
you
yeah.
didn't
A
know
lot.
how to say, I'm
Mm.
depressed.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking like going back to what you mentioned about Gen Z and just like from a generational aspect, so many more people, millennials, Gen Z, are starting to get curious and want to get help versus maybe the older generations.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there had to be like something wrong, like
Yeah.
something had to happen. A lot of times when and again, nothing wrong with them, but when I mention to people that I'm a trauma therapist, they'll be like, oh, so like soldiers and ER workers. And I'll be like, or your mom next door? Or
Any,
the grocery store clerk?
anyone?
Everyone? And they'd be like, I could just never do the work you do. And I'd be like, you do it every day. You're just not aware that you are encountering people with trauma and you're encountering your own difficulties as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a great perspective on it. That I think it would be very hard to find someone who has zero amounts of trauma in this world.
I don't think they'd be very funny, frankly.
I think so. Be so
It's
serious.
okay. You're
So
not gonna,
serious.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's my perspective. I could be wrong.
Do you have thoughts on the trends in the social media trends and the mental health trends on TikTok, Instagram, self-diagnosing?
I am grateful that people are talking about this.
100%.
grateful that people are talking about things. So, like, if this is from therapist to therapist, other therapists looking out there, and actually for anyone else too, therapists at the end of the day are just people. I was actually on, I think it's on one of the Facebook groups of therapists supporting therapists, and people said, "What's one misconception people have of you?" And someone said that we're perfect. And I responded, "Aren't we?" I better leave. I, I got a lot of thumbs up for that one. But I'm done. No, in all seriousness, I think that sometimes there's this idea that we don't mess up sometimes. When as therapists, we need to be super transparent about that. We need to be doing our own work. But also when a client comes in and they're like, well, this therapist on TikTok told me that I have an internal wolf and the internal wolf is bad. And I'm like, I don't know where we're going. I've been working with you for a while and I'm pretty sure you understand my clinical lens. I could be wrong. So let's review that. But follow that. If it resonates with you, follow it. If it doesn't, don't follow it. That's all it comes down to. And maybe go talk to someone with some licensing because I don't know about you, but it was a lot of work to get where I'm standing today. And I'm really proud of what I've done and I take it very seriously.
Yeah.
So,
Same. Yeah. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of heavy work.
mhm.
Even
Yeah,
I think even if your work isn't rooted in trauma, working in this field is heavy.
it is. Yeah. Well, I think you can only take someone as far as you've been willing to go yourself. So there's a lot that I don't understand. And I'm deeply honored when someone comes into my practice and they says, I just don't think you get it. Awesome. Thank you for telling me. Where do I need to grow?
Yeah.
What are you seeing? And it's a lot of work for us to keep for what it's worth. And not that we're complaining. I think we come to this field because we're always going to be lifelong learners.
Yeah.
So I really hope there doesn't come a day where I'm like, no, this is the way it has to be. This is what I learned when I was 35 and I refuse to acknowledge anything else. That'd be a really sad day for us and for our clients.
Yeah. I think it's just normalizing that it's also a field that there is more and more research coming out. So there's a lot more changing versus what it was maybe 50 years ago when it was just rooted in like a handful of modalities and like theories. And there's so many more options now to try to keep up with, and everyone can find them on social media. Like I had a huge influx of clients wanting IFS work. And I was like, where is this
Mhm.
coming from? Oh, there's a TikTok boom of people talking about their
Yeah.
parts and all of the things. And I was like, this tracks, but it's like how to be maybe not expected to, but the pressure internally to keep up with that is also a lot.
Absolutely. Especially when every training costs like $5,000. And you're like, I don't have that time or money right now.
Yeah.
The one thing I think I would say to anyone, both therapists and people listening to this who aren't, necessarily working in the field, but interested in it, is that the data says again and again that the number one indicator of clinical success in therapy is if you actually like your therapist, right? I could be trained in all the things here, but if we don't connect, we don't. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
More than anything, first of all, you're allowed. I remember I had this really sweet, I see 17 and up. And so I had this very sweet little 17-year-old come in. I even told my last therapist that I'm not going to see her anymore. And I was like, oh, you don't have to. She said, don't. I was like, no, we're grown-ups.
Yeah.
We can handle this. And this is part of our life. So if you don't like your therapist, it's okay. Or if they worked for you for a time and then you need to move on, awesome.
Yeah.
We just want you to find the help that you need.
Yeah. I think let's come back to this. How do you find a therapist? Beside one more question on trauma and what your thoughts
Yep.
are on trauma being like using the word trauma for kind of as a descriptor for everything right now.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think triggered had a moment for a while and
Mhm.
maybe continues to, but now trauma's moving into its place and what your thoughts are on.
Yeah. So again, what these words can do is they can become cognitive shortcuts where we can just say that and then we don't have to do anything about it, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, trigger became that. I actually have started using the word activator now with
Yeah.
clients and when I talk to people because trigger just it conjures up images of a snowflake. Like we have just created that shortcut. By the way, that's what our brain is supposed to do. It's supposed to create shortcuts.
Okay.
Right. But it starts really with an awareness. Oh, is this using like just a cognitive shortcut here? Am I actually really thinking about things? And ultimately, any sort of trauma work is about healing and creating a life based in the now rather than past. In my own particular life and world, I can't go to a Catholic church service. I just can't.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm okay with yeah. Not sure who my family is, but I'm okay with that. I would like to get to the point where it's not so difficult. Does it need to be there now? No, because there's plenty of other things I can do. Now, if I were going to go to a wedding or if I like my son's graduation or something that was involved, okay, sounds like I need to do some work around this because now it's impacting someone else's life. And it's my responsibility to either figure out a way to say, I will be part of this in a different way, or I'm going to do the work so that I can be present
Yeah.
and remind myself that I'm not where I was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense? So, yeah, even when we use trauma for ourselves, just to know that it's not an indicator that people around us need to be tiptoeing, but that we have work to do and we have a responsibility to say, how do I take care of myself in this moment?
Yeah.
I
I
have
think, yeah.
some,
Yeah. I
sorry.
think I think the reframe of that is helpful versus just like throwing the word out because you don't have any other vocabulary for it.
And again, we're all just trying, right? We're all just trying. And so even that is a huge step for some people to be like, this is a trigger for me.
Mhm.
And then they get stuck again.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So out of compassion, one would hope that the other person respond with, okay, what can we do to help you feel better?
Yeah.
Can we do to help you feel safe? And I'm talking on a very personal level. Like when we're talking about larger systemic injustices or restorative justice, again, Lance JW is going to come out strong here. That's something else where we need to have a different discussion. But even on an individual level, if I were to just say, I'm sorry, my kids currently go to a Catholic school. I'm sorry, you need to have your graduation for fifth graders in a different place because I can't be in a church. Like, how is that fair?
Right.
Right. And then it makes it about me. And it's not about me. It's about me and my kid. So that's more of what we're working. So it's an awareness that we need. We need to keep doing some work and reminding ourselves that we're not there anymore.
Yeah. And I think just keeping the conversations going and open is
Mhm.
huge right now.
Yes. Yes. So just keeping it going and being aware. I wonder if some of the frustration that people have around that term really is just in how people shut down, period. And anytime we shut down, we're saying that we can't survive this battle. We don't have enough strength, and nothing could be further from the truth. Right. We have what it takes. We might need a minute. That's okay. But we do have what it takes.
Yeah. How do we go about finding a good therapist? A good fit, I should say.
Trial and error. Isn't that lovely? The reason why the data says that, and this is my interpretation, but is I think it's because we just don't know enough about the brain. And thank God, therapy in general is going to operate on a very different model than the typical medical model. So, typical medical model would say, you're coughing, you have a sore throat, you want to throw up. Okay, we're going to run these 3 tests. We're going to figure out what it is. With therapy, we're like, you hate your dad, your job is awful, and you're not sure about this kid that you had. Do they have autism? Do they have ADHD? Are you mad at them? Or are you mad at yourself? The way you respond, right? It's all those things. And as a therapist, we say, okay, tell me more. Because it's going to be rooted in a lot of different things. We're not just going to say, yeah, it's your dad, or yeah, it's your kid, or yeah, it's your parents. We're going to say these are all part of it and it's impacting your day to day life. How do we want to start unpacking this? And that's very different and difficult. I think, again, we're so used to answers. Actually, I know when I was in grad school and I was taking my first trauma class, I went and I got my hair colored. It's this lady I've been seeing for a while and I was so pumped. Like I was so pumped. I don't get my hair colored a lot, so that was a big deal.
Also doing it while you were in grad school. Good job.
I know. Thank
Good
you.
for you.
And parenting 3 children. Yes, this was awesome. But I was like, yeah, taking this awesome class on trauma and I'm learning so much. She's like, gosh, tell me more. And part of me was, well, no, that was it. I want to read my magazine now. Like, okay, if someone wants to learn, I'll educate. So I spent the whole session, like the whole 2-hour color session, talking with her about trauma, how it originates in a lot of our attachment stuff, how we notice it show up in our body, how these patterns repeat throughout our life until we heal them and notice them. And we get to the end and she's curling my hair and it looks pretty good. She looks at me and she says, is there like a pill I can take? I should have read the magazine. I just should have read the magazine. Like,
No.
but I think in general, we have this sense that this should be a quick and easy fix.
Yeah.
And if this were a quick and easy fix, like, honestly, would we really even want to know ourselves then? Because we are complex and dynamic and growing and amazing people.
Yeah.
And that is built on slow growth and processing. I'm not the person I was 15 years ago. I'm not the person I was 12 years ago. I'm not the person I was 2 hours ago. So we get to have this growth and this change and this dynamism. I don't know. I should figure that out. But there's this
Go with it.
no, and then, yeah. And our therapist should be someone who's willing to do that work with us. If they're not, I would argue that either I'd be curious if they haven't done their own work, if they're overworked, which is very real in our industry ultimately, or that their quotas are being set by a medical model is another concern, or they're selling something, right? And at the end of the day, all we have to offer our clients is, you know, our knowledge, our education, our authenticity, and our goodwill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the trial and error piece, I think. How many times do you think someone should see a therapist before it doesn't work?
Again, looking at numbers, I think that's very personal. I think we've all had clients like this where, and maybe even people who aren't therapists know people in their lives who are like, yep, I hate that restaurant. It's not going to take them very long to be like, nope, not a bit. Others, I've been working with you for a while. I know I worked with, one of my therapists when I was starting to do my work was awesome for 2 years. And then I noticed that I started getting a panic attack before I would go to therapy, like regularly. And I was
Not
like,
what you want.
I think this is a sign that I need it. And she was exactly who I needed at that stage in my life.
Yeah.
I needed somebody to sit me down, tell me what to do. And I was like, okay. But once I had gotten out of that, a very difficult space in which I couldn't figure out which way to go, I needed somebody who's going to sit,
Yeah.
right? And every therapist has their different flavor, and it's okay. You.
And I think even from our side of the couch or the table or the screen, we, I feel like I oftentimes know that it's also not a good
Mhm. That's a good point. Yeah. That's a hard one. Can I ask how you manage that actually? I'd be curious.
I've had some pretty tough conversations of I feel like this isn't I'm doing more work than you. I feel like this is when I'm having to continually maybe ask what you want to talk about, ask what you want to work about, continue to pull things out of you. That tells me that maybe this isn't working.
Mm.
Maybe, maybe it's me as the therapist. Maybe we're not vibing. Maybe you're just not quite ready. Maybe you need a different approach kind of thing of but I can generally tell when it's, or they're just maybe like restless or fidgety or disengaged and like this, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what's going on.
I think you also bring up a good point too that it's okay for therapy not to be the time for therapy for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I think a lot of therapy is planting seeds for other therapists to reap and sowing seeds that and plants that other or reaping. There we go. Planting seeds for other therapists to reap and reaping what other therapists have sown. Thank you. That was a lot harder to say than I thought it would be. But I know clients have come to me and they've been like, well, I just didn't like my previous therapist. I'm like, $10, they probably actually did a decent job. Maybe not. Maybe they were really awful. Who knows? But I wonder if there were some things that they started to grow in you that is
Yeah.
going to see some fruition together. Right. And then I've had some clients who have started work with me and then been like, oh, crud, this uncovered a lot that I don't want to deal with.
Yep.
Okay. That's okay.
Yes.
You have permission to say, I see this here. I'm not going to deal with it right now.
Right.
Okay. That's allowed. Again, I think with the peer pressure of social media, do your work and blah, 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 blah. And dude, we got a lot going on in our lives. If now is not the time, that's okay. Just tell yourself, what's it going to look like when you're ready to do this work?
Yeah.
How will you know?
Yeah. And I think the permission and consent aspect of it is so huge of if it's again, it's okay if you're not ready, but if you are ready, let's talk about what those next steps are.
Mhm.
And if I'm not the right person to go on that journey with you, let me help you find someone who is.
Yes.
because that is all I want for you is to ride this journey out the way you want to do it. We're not married. We're not stuck together. We don't have to do this forever.
You will not see me again outside of this.
In my case, I wish that was true, but unfortunately, I live in Minneapolis and I run into people everywhere.
Fair.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fine. We don't have to process outside of here, but
We don't. Yeah. And yeah,
we pretend nothing's going on.
yeah. It is weird when you see like your therapist out in the wild. Even like when I'd been a therapist for a few years, but I saw my therapist once get out of a car. And I was like, oh my God, she has a car.
She's a real person.
And then I had to check myself and be like, Laura, you have a car.
You
And
do.
you're
Yeah.
that.
It's a funny story now, but were out for dinner, me and my husband and daughter, and one of my child clients came up and said hi to me as my 4-year-old is having a massive meltdown in this restaurant. And I was like, this just sums up my work in a nutshell in that I am also human as my toddler is having the biggest meltdown of all time, I swear. As my client is coming over, parents are like watching. Now's not the time, guys. But here we are. Let me say hi to you. You go back to your parents. Let me deal with this. It's okay.
Whatever, like a demo on how to ineffectively manage this, because the stress
Yeah.
or effectively. I don't know. We need to go. We'll see how my child lacks.
Yeah. My child also has tantrums and I am a child therapist. So here we are.
Good for you, Matt. Yeah, it happened to everyone. I joke that I can't wait to figure out what my kids go to therapy for because I'm confident it's going to be a lot.
Something.
And I hope that they get the help they need. Right?
Exactly.
At the end of the day, I'm human.
Yes, exactly. At the end of the day, we're human. Just as we wrap up here, closing question. If you could do anything in the world and nobody knew what it was, what would you do?
I would want to speak every language.
Whoa.
Mhm.
How many languages are there?
I don't know, but I'd figure it out.
Okay.
So I was an English undergraduate degree was my super useful, but words fascinate me and meaning fascinates me and the way we communicate and why we communicate and how we do.
Okay.
So I'm relearning German.
Okay.
I had a 108-day streak.
Proud of you.
I'm proud of me.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I think that's what I do.
Okay.
Think
Where
about
can
it
people-
completely.
Oh my God, right? Yeah, what a cool, that would be so awesome. A lot of work, but that would be amazing. Where can people find you?
People can find me on openwaytherapy.com. I am still setting up my social media, so I'll make sure that this is out there for you by the time the session airs. But openwaytherapy.com, or I'm at Turning Leaf Therapy in Minnetonka.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure.
Such a gift as well. Thank you for your time, Ryan.
Thanks. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more or follow either of us on social media, you can find more information in the show notes. Thanks for your support and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.